So before we read the last two pages, let's go over the illustrations that we see here and talk about our last vocabulary word for today's lesson. So as I look at my picture over here, I see that the expression on that squirrel's face is pretty happy. He looks pretty impressed that he is still alive. But if you'll notice here at the vacuum cleaner, there's something falling out and it's caught his attention. It has caught his attention. So he goes over to investigate, and then it looks like he's not just looking at it, but he's using another sense. He's using that sense of smell. So I make a connection to that. It must be something that he thinks smells pretty good. And I don't think that carpet or grass is probably going to smell good to him, but when I look over on this page, I see that there's all kinds of stuff coming out of that vacuum cleaner. I see crackers, I see little bits of paper, and that looks like it's making him pretty happy. Now also I see that there's proof on this page that this is a fantasy. That's going to come up a little bit later in a question, just a warning. What could never ever happen in a million years? Yes, you're right. A squirrel could never pick up this vacuum cleaner. This vacuum cleaner was carrying this older lady around, a grown adult. So definitely no way that a squirrel could empty out a vacuum cleaner, let alone pick it up. And then the last word that we had for today's vocabulary is someone who is mundane, is ordinary, and often dull. So Flora, is she boring and often dull? The squirrel, is he boring and often dull? Or do we have our Mrs. Flockham that's boring and often dull? So let's read and see if we can find out who is being mundane or who we think is mundane in this story. The squirrel was a little unsteady on his feet. Ooh, I see a word that we talked about earlier, not a word, but a word part, a prefix that means not. His brain felt larger, roomier. It was as if several doors in the dark room of his self, doors he hadn't even known existed, had suddenly been flung wide. Everything was shot through with meaning, purpose, light. However, the squirrel was still a squirrel, and he was hungry. Very. Now, if you've ever heard people say, my life flashed right before my eyes, that's what it sounds like is happening to this squirrel. He was like, I'm a new person. I get the chance to live again. But then his brain took over. And remember earlier what Flora said, it doesn't matter what a squirrel is about. He's always thinking about food. So look at what Flora thinks. Who can say what astonishments are hidden inside of the most mundane being? So she thinks this squirrel is mundane because usually all he thinks about is food, 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 food. She had no idea how astonished she would be if he was really thinking through the meaning of life. Sorry, guys. Okay, that's all for our reading lesson today, but we are going to do a writing lesson next. We have go back and look over your vocabulary and look at the way that the patterns spell the words. And we also have a grammar assignment. So complete the rest of the slides, and then I will be with you tomorrow. Let me know if you need any help from me, and I'll see you soon.